someone who is accommodating. But people who are accommodating are good at what? I don't recommend this as a negotiation style, but they have their benefits. And one of them is building relationships. People like this usually have a very high EQ to a point where they're very observant of other people's body language. They want to please the other side, but they're easily taken advantage of. Very passive and not cooperative, avoiding. Of course, there are times when we all do this, right? Why would we do that? Why would we avoid conflict short term? Maybe if the other negotiating party across the table is just fuming, he's yelling, he's being very expressive, not instrumental, maybe you just kind of want to avoid the issue for a moment. Kind of a short-term tactic. Do not recommend this as a negotiation style, but the fact is, all of us employ all of these styles. It's kind of like arrows, right? You kind of click the right arrow at the right time. Compromising is what? Just that. You're kind of moderately assertive, you're moderately cooperative. Why would you want to compromise? A lot of that took place in these negotiations today, right? When you 400, 300, and you finish at 236 or 280. The advantage of compromising is well, not exactly a win-win, is it? I mean, this not exactly a win-win, but you do reach an agreement, a solution, but it's...
You get a deal.
You get a deal. It's fast, isn't it?
When you're running out of time.
When you're running out of time. Compromising is excellent if it's like, oh my gosh, we got to, I got to head back to LA tomorrow morning. Let's horse trade.
Yeah.
I'll meet you halfway, right?
I guess it all depends on the position of the parties prior to the negotiation, how much power is relative to that. I mean, if we come in equal terms, of course I'm not going to be accommodating, but if I depend a lot on the outcome, like my biggest customer is going to walk away,
exactly.
Hey, I will accommodate this time.
Exactly. That's the other thing. It all has to do with power or the perception of power. Can power change somewhat? I was telling that little story when I was 9 years old. It was a what we call that was a compromising. It was a positional bargaining. But who had the power there? In a way, I had the power because I could just walk away, which is what I did. But in a way, the seller knew exactly what his costs were. He knew what his profit was. I didn't walk to other stalls and find out what other people were selling. That's what I said before. So, but you're right. And we all do this. We all switch styles. We all want to win-win, but in reality, when it comes to the business, power or time, you need to switch styles. Collaborating is what? That's very assertive and very cooperative. You're looking, and some people call compromise, you lose, I lose, only because, why? Because you leave money on the table. You don't expand the pie. But I don't quite see it that way, but that's what a lot of negotiators would say. Collaborating is what? You and I win also. Okay. It takes time because in collaborating, what kind of people are good collaborators?
Trust each other.
What's that?
Trust each other.
Yes, there's trust. And through trust, you can what? Discover
Each other's needs.
you can discover their needs and their values, their interests, and then you start to invent options of how you can develop a win-win negotiation strategy where both parties benefit. That's collaboration. You and I win. Some people would say, what's the downside of that? I'm not saying there's a downside, but there is a result, a consequence of that.
You can't accept my needs. My needs are too demanding that you can't do it.
Right.
And vice versa.
It's also slow.
It's slow. It takes time, doesn't it? It takes effort to do that. And sometimes if you've gone through negotiation training classes, you look at every issue as well. Let's collaborate. Let's invent options. almost anything, hey, we're running out of time. So it's important to do collaborating on those really important issues. Others would argue it's important to do all the time, but that really is one of the downsides. But I think in reality, in the real business world, we use all 5 conflict modes, primarily competing, collaborating, commenting, and sometimes just avoiding the issue. I've done this a couple times. Not as a strategy, but a style to kind of put in there. We can discuss it tomorrow. A lot of these concessions or issues are best sometimes put near the end. Let's go after the big issues now, and the rest we can settle. But there are 2 approaches to negotiation, 2 basic approaches. And this is, has anybody taken a negotiation course before or read the book Getting to Yes, right, by Fisher? There are basically 2 approaches. One is distributive and one is integrative. Does anybody know the parable of the orange? It's just like the coconut. This was 2 chefs that were fighting over the orange. One needed the orange for orange juice to cook, to use in the kitchen. The other one needed the peel. They didn't know that because they didn't share that information. And so, what's the solution? One guy gets it, the other one doesn't. Or you compromise. So let's just cut it in half. I get half an orange. Now I can't make a full glass of orange juice, so now I only have a half an orange to make my cake. This is considered a win-lose. This comes from which conflict style that we just saw? Competing, right? Integrative, in the term, in that book, it's called Principled Negotiating, the book from Fisher and Hurry. Integrative, actually, that term came out in the 1920s by a woman by the name of Mary Parker Follett, who was a great woman writer and a great thinker that people had never heard of later, but it's only in recent years that people are reading her works. And that was really the power of understanding versus coercive power. It was the power of, she called it power with versus power over. And basically, integrative was her term, and now it's being taught at Harvard and Thunderbird and other schools. These are the basic 2 approaches. But there are 4 principles of integrative negotiations, and this comes from Fisher and Hurry. Every book I've read on negotiating, this came out I think in the early 90s, but every book written since then has basically been based on this. Every global negotiation book, every course I've taken, is really based on these 4 basic principles. And these are principles that you've probably already seen for yourself in doing the coconut negotiations. Separate the people from the problem. That's the very first step. Why is that important?
It's not personal.
What's that?
It's not personal.
Right.
It's not. It takes the personal biases or culture or whatever out of the equation.
Exactly.
Base for a good relationship.
What's that?
Actually, this is a base for a good relationship.
Yeah, very good base for a relationship. Be hard on the problem, but be soft on the people. And I've seen a lot of negotiations, people take things personally. Negotiators are people first, I think. It's important to make that distinction. You can be in a heavy debate, a heavy negotiation. Here in China, I've seen it. But once you get personal, you're going to ruin that trust, you're going to ruin the relationship. Some Chinese or some Westerners are resilient. In some cultures, it's okay to mix the 2 together. I've seen it. Not okay, but they do it. You have to deal with it. My boss was one of those, but many, many years ago. He loved to argue, and he would intimidate. I've seen him yell at wholesalers. I was shocked because it's really not my style, but I've seen it. Then in Jack Portman, the Portman Hotel, we had we negotiated a loan, a very large loan. We needed a guarantor. Chen Rong, who was the head of Citco, the Shanghai International Trust Corporation, was the guarantor. We had it all lined up. you don't have a blank clue about real estate finance. And that was the end of the deal. That was it. That was the end of the relationship. Because we didn't really focus on the merits or the principles of why we needed the loan and why he needed to guarantee the loan. Didn't separate the people from the problem. Focus on interests rather than positions. Principle number 2, which is what this exercise was all about, wasn't it? Once you have a position, and you did a very good job, by the way, arguing your position, if you're a positional bargainer. But what happens then, you get into a bidding war. Okay, and you had a contract for the next year, which is great, but then you make an assumption that there will be a next year. But when you focus on interest rather than positions, then it opens what? A whole nother door. The idea behind focus on interest, of course, is really in expanding the pie. Not dividing the pie, but expanding the pie. We came here in 1985 to do what? Actually, to negotiate this project, but 1981 we came to sell architectural services. Our original desire was to make $7–8 million in architectural fees. But as we explored the interest, we realized, my gosh, you know, they don't have anybody here to really manage the project. So, okay, let's negotiate a management agreement. They wanted us to do that. And then, what about financing? Well, we don't have the money. But was it the interest of the Chinese party to see foreign investment in the city? Hey, no problem. We'll help you out on that. We'll have the Bank of China be one of the lenders. So we brought in the Bank of China, $15 million. So, oh my gosh, that's not enough. We need $145 million. And then the Bank of China, with our relationship, they went out and found 18 other banks. So we had a 19-bank loan syndication. Then it became $145 million project, 100% financed, which is, talk about leverage, it's a good deal. But then we realized, oh my gosh, you know, there's no housing in the city. This is just a hotel and office and retail. But where are the foreigners going to live? Oh, we need apartments here at Shanghai Center. Well, that's another $30 million. So we went back to the Bank of China and said, hey, we need $175 million. No, $145 million, that's it. So then we went to AIG, American International Group. And we were able to get $30 million from them to make up that difference. Of course, that became a whole nother negotiation. What was their interest? Well, they wanted to make a profit. They wanted a big share of the project. But we knew apartments is where the money was at. But AIG had another interest. And we knew that, and that's why we went to them. AIG was founded where? 1919. Founded in Shanghai in 1919. They were forced to leave in 1949 after the revolution. They wanted to come back to China. We knew that. They wanted to sell insurance. And so they used us as that leverage to work with the municipal government. It's a whole other story. And they were the first foreign insurance company to sell insurance in China because of this project, because of the relationships they developed. So the pie started at $9 million, and then it went up to $175 million, which really ended up being $200 million by the time we have cost overruns. It became a bigger project. But then again, those cost overruns were absorbed by our Japanese contractor. And to answer your question, how come we chose a Japanese contractor? Because the Japanese contractor was willing to eat the first $10 million of cost overruns. No one else wanted to. We said, okay, if you eat the first $10 million, we'll make you a minority partner. So that was the reason. Why did we do that? Because we were exploring interests. You know, and Kojima was the name of the contractor, wanted to be in China as well. Whoops. And this kind of goes together with interest. Invent options for mutual gain. And keep it separate. Inventing options, you know, you have to hold back judgment. So let's brainstorm. You know, when we came here, we wanted to, like I said, an architectural project, but then we started brainstorming, what else can we do? And then when they said, okay, we want you to operate it, we want you to finance it, they said, well, yeah, but there wasn't a legal framework for that. So let's brainstorm with the Chinese partner. And it's okay to we brainstorm internally, but then we built that level of trust where we can bring Chinese in. And then we start bringing in people from the government as well, other stakeholders. And a good example of that, let's see, when the project opened, you know, apartments was easy, big money maker. Office was easy, because these were other companies that had contracts in China. But retail was an issue. We could only lease to domestic retail companies. Why? This was before WTO. Foreign retailers were not allowed to set up operations in China. And that was tough because we had very high-profile anchor tenants that were willing to spend a lot of money to be in Shanghai, but they had no way of leasing to them because they could not be a legal entity in this. Now it's easy. It's hard to believe, isn't it? But back then it wasn't. So I talked to the Chinese partner. This is good for you and it's good for me because it's good for the project, and we've negotiated a profit split after so many years. It's good for the government. Why? Because high-profile retail tenants. So we actually went off to Suzhou, stayed in a villa. We thought, what can we do? You know, could you please change the law? That was one of the options. And then when it comes to inventing options, there's no such thing as a bad one. Just brainstorm. It's like we're doing work. And so we wrote them on the board. What could we do? And then at the end of the day, we came up with, I don't know, 4 or 5 different options. The one that made the most sense was, well, you know, you can have subcontractors here. Kojima, the Japanese company, was a why can't we have retail subcontractors? So that's exactly what we did. We had a 3-party memorandum. Party A, the Chinese partner. Party B, us. Party C, the retailer. And not only because of that, they piggybacked on our investment, they were allowed to bring in all their build-outs and materials duty-free. So it was, in a way, this was years before WTO, but because the Chinese are very particularistic, they're very flexible in that regard, they helped us come up with that option. But by including them in the inventing option phase, they had some ownership and buy-in, so it made it successful.
So the retailers were your subs?
Absolutely.
That's cool.
Now it's just different. Now they come here, we'd like to rent space, great. Okay, please register over here at the Bureau for Industry and Commerce. And the center now does that. So we can help you if you want. But back then it was a matter of help, they needed us. Strange, huh?
That's cool.
Fourth principle, insist that the agreement be based on objective criteria. You know, it's like if we'd come to Shanghai and say, hey, you know, we'd like to negotiate the price of this project, can we just drive the piles maybe just 20 feet down? Now, that's not negotiable, is it? It has to be based on what's safe, what are the international requirements. To the Chinese, this was hugely important. We want you to manage the project based according to international standards. To us, we want to be treated fairly as a cooperative venture. We didn't have the legal framework nor the money to act. Even if we had the money, we couldn't buy the land here. It belonged to the government. They didn't have the land lease law. So we said, okay, let's have like a joint venture, but we'll put up all the money. But what about the land? The Chinese partner said, well, we'll pay the land use fees, which they did. But then for us to, that was before the land lease law, so what is the objective criteria for cooperation? We'd like to have it for 30 years, 40 years. There was no precedent for that. The Chinese were looking at from more of a historical perspective. And so we based it on what was the longest cooperative venture or joint venture in China at the time. It was 18 years. So this project had an 18-year cooperation period, beginning from operation day. But we put in the contract, but should things change, we would like to further negotiate, because interests change. And so in this case, we focused on the interest, and something happened in 1989, June of 1989, which there was political turmoil. And what was important to the Chinese at that time was that a lot of people pulled out. to really be a beacon for further investment, for further FDI, foreign direct investment. Deng Xiaoping went down to Shenzhen in 1992 and said to be rich is glorious. This was an opportunity for us, and so we pushed this interest. It dovetailed with the Chinese interest, so we were able to get another 7 years. Then we got another 5 years, so we continued to expand the pie. All that was based on objective criteria. Let's see. I'm going to go through this quickly, but not everybody is an integrated negotiator. What if the other side uses hard bargaining negotiation tactics? And I've seen this really happen. I've seen this happen in negotiations.
Yeah.
And by all means, if you can avoid it, avoid it. When you see something, can you see that? Yeah. When you see something like that, these are kind of some of the bargaining tactics. Phony facts. The other side says, hey, we can do this, or this car was only driven by an old lady from Pasadena. I think we've all done that when we bought a used car in the United States. Watch out for that. Ambiguous authority, where you're negotiating with someone, but he really doesn't have the authority to negotiate on behalf of the party. So it's important to understand, who do you represent? Can you make a deal? This is oftentimes a ploy where you make concessions to the other party, and they say, to be honest, I really can't really negotiate this. And so they leave, someone else comes in and takes over the negotiations, but you've already made your concessions. In a way, the third extension of this cooperation period, which was an additional 5 years, negotiated with a Chinese partner, had ambiguous authority for them. So it was a new director of the Chinese Chinese entity, and this actually was after I left Shanghai Center. He negotiated the extension, but he didn't have the authority really to approve it. He did send it to the municipal government for approval. And so for years, the American side thought that in fact we had an extension, but we didn't. Once it came to the attention of the government authorities, says, oh wow, we've got some conditions now. And they added a whole list of conditions to make that happen, which I won't go into now. Intimidation and personal attacks happens a lot, doesn't it? And they do that just to unnerve the other party. Threats, hey, we'll go someplace else. We've got another buyer. We've got buyer one. We'll buy our coconuts for more. And then let's cut off the negotiations. That happened to us here too, where a Chinese partner at one point said, we've got Travel Pro we can talk to. It doesn't have to be Portland. These things happen. Good guy, bad guy is a common technique. In Chinese, only in red face, white face from Peking opera. And of course, extreme demands, very high prices. All these things happen to us throughout the project. And how you deal with that is, when you see it, recognize it. No one's going to say, hey, I'm playing good guy, bad guy. They don't do that. They do it very, very carefully, very skillfully. So when you do that, recognize the tactic, raise the issue. It's okay to raise the issue. Don't attack the person, attack the problem, but go ahead and raise it. Oh, I see you're kind of doing the good guy, bad guy thing. That's very, yeah, cool. Or I see I'm sitting in a lower chair than you. I'm sitting in a lower chair in the sense of my